Okay, Hare Krishna. Let us start, dear devotees, let us start with our introduction prayer today. Paramatma Prabhu, I'm going to ask you to please read the English after we sing the prayer, right? So it's introduction on page 1 of Bhagavad Gita as it is.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
I'll start there. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrinda Vrindeshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Paramatma Prabhu, kindly read for us.
Hare Krishna. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master and unto the feet of all Vaishnavas. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, along with his elder brother, Sanatan Goswami, as well as Raghunath Dasa and Raghunath Bhatta, Gopala Bhatta, and Srila Jiva Goswami. I offer my respectful obeisances to Lord Krishna, Chaitanya, and Lord Nityananda, along with Advaita Acharya, Gadadhara, Srivas, and other associates. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna, along with their associates, Sri Lalita and Vishaka. Oh my dear Krishna, you are the friend of the distressed and the source of creation. You are the master of the gopis and the lover of Radharani. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I offer my respects to Radharani, whose bodily complexion is like molten gold, and who is the queen of Vrindavan. You are the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, and you are very dear to Lord Krishna. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, just like desire trees, and they are full of compassion for the fallen souls. I offer my obeisances to Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Gadara, Srivas, and all others in the line of devotion. Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, we'll just do a little bit of pranam like this. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Kauravani pracharine nirvisesha shunyavadi paschatadeshatharine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Krishna Radhe Jaya Radha Radhanata Radhe Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya. Hare Krishna once again, and welcome once again to all simple devotees. Okay, so last week we stopped at verse number 12 on chapter 2. So we're continuing today from verse number 13. All right, so today I would encourage everybody to take turns and read the Sanskrit verse. If you wish to, please, indicate. I know we had got one volunteer already, so I'm going to start off with this first one, and we'll see from there. Whoever wants to read, please do indicate, right? So, text 13. Dehinosmin yata dehe kaumaram yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir dhirastatra namoyate. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Sorry, I was going to have projected that verse. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So, I think before we go on reading the purport of this verse, let's just do a recap. I want to do a recap, like a revision of where we stopped from last week, right? So, remember now, Arjuna was posing a whole lot of, he's putting across a whole lot of arguments as to why he does not want to fight, or rather why he should not fight. He's busy saying to Krishna, he's giving him different reasons, quoting from Shastra, and the predominant or four main reasons that he brought forward is up on the screen here. He felt compassion firstly. We said that the nature of a devotee is very soft-hearted. He's very compassionate. So likewise, Arjuna felt a lot of compassion in his heart. He didn't want to destroy family. He didn't want destruction of dynasty. And he gave a whole lot of reasons there as well, if you remember from our previous classes, that, there's going to be pollution, degradation of family, and there's going to be pollution of women and so forth, right? Then he was also fearful of sinful reaction. He did not want to enjoy a blood-stained kingdom. He felt that now if he kills his cousins and his family members, that kingdom would actually be blood-stained. What is the point of enjoying a kingdom after having taken the lives of family members and friends? So he was fearful. He thought he would get a reaction for that. Then he was also very indecisive. He was very confused. And remember at the point in verse 7, chapter 2, verse 7, that's when Arjuna submitted to Krishna and said, Krishna, now I am very confused, and I am confused due to my silly weakness. So now in this confused state, Krishna, oh, please, I surrender to you. I'm now a soul fully surrendered unto you. And I ask of you to kindly guide me. Right? So now we can also relate to this confusion of Arjuna in our lives. We also have many challenges in our lives, just like Arjuna had. And remember, we said previously that the Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Lord to Arjuna for our benefit. So let us now examine what kind of challenges we could possibly have in relation to these four points that we just discussed here that Arjuna was experiencing. Right? So Arjuna's compassion for his friends and relatives, how would we relate to that? Don't we also get caught up in our material life and we think with emotion rather than intelligence? Sometimes if we're in a position of authority and assume that our subordinate has done something wrong. Sometimes we're inclined to bend the rules, so to speak. But doesn't matter. I'll let it go this time. Or I will not give you the punishment that you actually deserve for having done that incorrect deed. That's because we're now ruling with our emotion rather than intelligence. Agree? Can we unmute? Can we hear on that point, please? Veronica Mataji, you want to say something on that point? Do you agree?
Yes, I agree. That's true.
It's true, right? Anybody else want to give an example? How can we relate to Arjuna's compassion to his friends and relatives? How do we deal with emotion rather than with intelligence? There's plenty of examples, I'm sure, in our day-to-day lives. Isn't it?
True. True.
Yeah. Let's take, for example, if somebody's in the profession of a police officer and he has to make an arrest, only to go there and find out that the person who he's going to arrest is his son. How would he deal with that? Assume nobody else knows about it. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of commitment. It takes intelligence to do the right thing. Isn't it? So in that way, I feel we can relate to what Arjuna felt in terms of compassion for his friends and relatives. Then we go on to the next point, enjoyment. Arjuna did not want to enjoy a blood-stained kingdom. He felt that it wouldn't be right to actually kill all his relatives and family members and then enjoy whatever's left of it. Because blood-stained kingdom, meaning that, it will always worry him at the back of his mind. He will always think that I had to sacrifice my family members. I had to sacrifice my friends. I had to sacrifice my teachers just to enjoy material opulence. That was his predicament. Now, how can we relate to this point? How can we relate? I've got some notes up here. You can read through it. Enjoyment. We would not appreciate opulence at the risk of a loved one. There's a nice, interesting story here that I came across in one of the classes that I was attending. It was brought up that there was a man once who hired somebody to hijack a car. And later on, he found out that the car that was hijacked belonged to his brother. And his brother was killed in that hijacking. So this man paid somebody, because that was his business, to hijack cars and sometimes kill the owners. In this instant, the owner was killed. And he later on found out that the car that was hijacked, when he goes to his brother's house, he found out that his car was hijacked and his brother was killed. And then he realized it was him. He actually set this up. So now that car, whatever he was going to do with it, sell it or whatever, that was his line of business, could he then enjoy the opulence, the proceeds from that car? No. Likewise, Arjuna feels that now if I kill my family members, I'm not going to enjoy the kingdom. Makes sense. Sinful reaction. You look here. Arjuna was afraid of sinful reaction. He did not want to reap the fruit of bad karma due to this killing. Giving up this attachment to them made him fearful of sinful reaction. So he became very fearful. He thought, now I kill them, it's murder. And we should not be murdering. And to top it off, murder for self-enjoyment. Because every action has a reaction. We spoke about karma briefly previously. We'll go more into detail with it later on. So whatever you do, be it a good deed or a bad deed, there's going to be a reaction. So Arjuna was afraid in that light. Now, how can we relate to that? Some people are very attached to certain rituals, for example. Let's look at our lives, right? And may do it without understanding. So there's lots of things that we do, all of us do, that we don't really understand. And we become very attached to it. And the fear is that when you stop doing it, it'll bring about sinful reaction. Does that make sense? But you don't understand what you're doing it for in the first place. Therefore, we need to educate ourselves and not be unnecessarily worried about the simple reaction. You see here, Arjun was afraid at that point of simple reaction, right? Because he didn't have the understanding. He did not understand that it was his duty, number one, to kill. Number two, he had to follow whatever Krishna wanted him to do. He had to follow the direction of Krishna. So therefore, he would not fall under this category of receiving any reaction, sinful reaction. Likewise, with us, if we don't know what we are doing and do it without understanding, right? There is no sinful reaction if we do things with understanding for the right purpose. If we study Shastra and follow instructions as per Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, do as Krishna says. Krishna says, for example, in one of the verses later on, abandon all varieties of religion and surrender unto me. So if you do that, will there be a simple reaction? Impossible. Impossible. Because Krishna is telling you to do it. Likewise, Krishna is telling Arjuna here, stand up and fight. So if you read through the pages of Bhagavad Gita, further verses, and listen and follow Krishna's instructions, you must follow it without fear, fearlessly. One of the symptoms of a devotee is fearlessness. If Krishna is telling you to do it, do it. Right? That's what this means. Then we go to another point where Arjuna goes on to talk about destruction of family dynasty. Let me stop here. Are there any comments thus far? Hare Krishna, please may I hear from you? Whom are we hearing from? Paramatma Prabhu?
Namaji, I just want to ask you, you said Arjuna's duty was to fight, but what will be our duty? Because we're not in the battlefield.
No, your duty is to study Shastra and follow authority. Our duty is that. Our duty is to do what we're doing right now. We are reading Bhagavad Gita. We are trying to understand it. We are reading through Prabhupada's purports. And we must practice what Krishna is asking us to do here. That is our duty.
Thank you so much, Mataji.
Radhika, Mataji, you wanted to say something and say you're unmuted.
No, nothing.
Okay. Anybody else want to share something on this point? Navakishore Mataji, Kadruta Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mata.
We must do our duties, full heart and soul, and to follow the instruction. And to know that it's will of God, not our responsible to choice between what we need and what we have to do and what is our desire. We must surrender just to the will of the Lord.
Yes, that's it, surrender. That's the word I was looking for. Our duty is to surrender. We must surrender to the Lord. Follow Guru and follow Shastra. Follow your Guru, follow scripture. So you're following Krishna, right? Okay, so can we move on? Destruction of family dynasty. So Arjun was afraid that he's going to destroy the dynasty, right? He felt that his family would be destroyed if he killed his relatives. He was worried about women becoming widowed, polluted, and unwanted progeny. We spoke about that previously as well. If women were left unprotected, they became widowed, and they had no fathers, brothers, sons to take care of them, they would become spoiled. They would become polluted. And then there would be unwanted population that would cause havoc in society. Right? Now, how can we relate to that point? There's a nice extract here from Sri Ram Katha on destruction of family dynasty. You see, in the Ram Katha, Ravana, you're all familiar with Ravana, the king Ravana, who was destroyed by Lord Ram. Okay, just raise your hands if you're not sure, right? So Ravana accused Vibhishan, who was his younger brother, of destroying family dynasty because Vibhishan turned to Lord Ramchandra. So Vibhishan was actually the only devotee in his family. He worshipped the Lord. Ravana, on the other hand, was a demon. He opposed the Lord. He wanted people to worship him instead. Now Vibhishan was not at all a destroyer of family dynasty. He left. It got to a point where he went to his brother Ravana and spoke to him on several occasions, explaining to him and trying his best to convince him to surrender to the Lord. But Ravana would hear nothing of that sort. In fact, Ravana accused Vibhishan of being a kuldrohi, in other words, a destroyer of the dynasty, and he kicked him out. He banished him from there. He said, you must go, you must leave here at once because you are a destroyer of our dynasty. You're a traitor. So Vibhishan, he basically left the palace. But what did he leave the palace for? One, he was kicked out of the palace, but more importantly, he left the palace to surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Ramchandra, of the Lord. And he did it because he was intelligent enough to realize that Lord Ram was God. And he wanted to serve the Lord and advance spiritually. Now, likewise, Arjuna had to fight the war for a higher purpose. His higher purpose was to serve the Lord in the Lord's mission and to follow the Lord's instructions. So can you see how we can draw this comparison from different scriptures? Because who's Lord Ramchandra? Who is Lord Ramchandra? It's Krishna, right? In a previous era, in a previous yuga, right? So in that way, that actually fits very nicely. So likewise, now Arjun had to surrender and follow the Lord's instruction, and in that way, he will not be destroying his family dynasty. Right. So on this point, we too need to understand that we need to sacrifice lower principles for higher principles. See, sometimes there may be challenges in our lives, just like Vibhishan had a challenge. Vibhishan left his older brother, but not out of disrespect or anything of that sort. He left him for a higher purpose. So sometimes we too need to ignore and overlook or even sacrifice certain relationships with certain opposers in our spiritual advancement. We should not allow anybody to stand in our spiritual life, spiritual advancement. I'm not saying that we should cause problems within the families. We should always help, lend a helping hand, and lead by example, and try our best to pick up those who are struggling to advance. Because everybody gets there at some point. It's a purification process. But we should not tolerate people who openly offend the Lord. Okay? Somebody would, for example, somebody would come and say, but why are you worshiping Krishna? Krishna is not God. That kind of thing we should not tolerate. Right? We may find sometimes even friends, relatives, they may try to stand in our way. But it is a question of faith in Krishna that triumphs. We need to stick to that faith in Krishna. Okay, so far. These comparisons okay so far?
It's good. The comparisons are good.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to have somebody read the English of the purport of verse 13, please. Thank you. Who's reading for us? Navikishore Mataji.
Okay.
Yes, Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Can read for us, Mataji.
Should I read purport or from the shloka?
The purport. Or you want to read the shloka? It's fine. Go for it.
Yes, I can read Sanskrit shloka also.
Yes.
Okay. Dehino smina yan anyatha dehe kaumara yauvanam jara तथा देहांतर प्राप्ति धीरम सत्र न मुह्यति. As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to young youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. Purport. Since every living being, every living entity is an individual soul, each is changing his body even every moment, manifesting sometimes as a child, sometimes as a youth, and sometimes as an old man. Yet the same point, spirit soul is there and does not undergo any change. This individual soul finally changes the body at death and transmigrates to another body. And since it is sure to have another body in the next birth, either material or spiritual, there was no cause for lamentation by Arjuna on account of death, neither for Bhishma nor for Drona, for whom he was so much concerned. Rather, he should rejoice for their changing bodies from old to new ones, thereby rejuvenating their energy. Such changes of body account for varieties of enjoyment or suffering according to one's work in life. So Bhishma and Drona, being noble souls, were surely going to have surely sorry.
Sorry about that. I'm just a little bit lost where you're reading. Are you still on the first page?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, continue, Mataji, sorry.
No problem. Such changes of body account for varieties of enjoyment of suffering according to one's work in life. So Bhishma and Drona, being noble souls, were surely going to have spiritual bodies in the next life, or at least life in heavenly bodies for superior enjoyment of material existence. So in either case, there was no cause of lamentation. Any man who has perfect knowledge of the constitution of the individual soul, the super soul and nature, both material and spiritual, is called Dhira, or most sober man. Such a man is never deluded by the change of bodies.
Thank you, Mataji. Okay, so remember we did Hare Krishna. The previous verse we spoke about Dhira, which is a sober person. We spoke about that in detail, right? That's an intelligent person and he understands the change of body. Bodies do change, but the soul does not die. Okay. Okay, so let's just go through some notes here, what Prabhupada says. Kaumara. Kaumar is like youthful, like children up to 16 years of age, it's referred to as Kaumar. 17 to 40, you consider them as young men. Thereafter you get Jara, which is old, 40 to 50 years, and then over 50, right? So Kaumaram Yovanam Jara. So from boyhood to youth to old age. Dhiras, we said, means a sober person or gentleman, cultured, educated person. They understand the change of body as that the body changes as they age, and they understand that they will eventually change bodies as well. So we can see that when we are born, our bodies look different. We're in baby forms. Then we're in a boyhood form, a teenage form, a young adult form, an old form, and eventually when this body is not capable of holding the soul any longer, the soul exits the body. That's called transmigration of the soul. In the previous verse, Krishna says that all of us existed previously, we are still existing, and we will continue to exist. So who is this we Krishna is talking about? The Atma or the soul. When the soul enters into a new body, we do not remember the previous body. So this does not mean that we didn't exist previously. This is transmigration of the soul. Just like when one changes one's dress, it does not mean that the person himself has changed. Correct? We change our cloth all the time, our clothes. Does it mean that these bodies have changed? No, it doesn't mean that. Likewise, when the soul comes out of this body and goes into another body, that soul doesn't change. The body changes. So Sachit Ananda Vigraha. Krishna does not change his body. He is Achyuta. We change our bodies, but Krishna doesn't change his body. Remember, we discussed that Achyuta means infallible, one who does not fall. So we are the opposite of Achyuta. We change our bodies because we are fallen. We are Chuta. That means fallible. So our bodies change. Now there are three energies. We get external, internal, and marginal. We fall under the marginal energy. This means that we remain under the external or spiritual energy, and we have that independence. So Krishna has given us that independence. He's given us intelligence. He says to us that I've given you this body, I've given you intelligence. Use your intelligence to your advantage or your disadvantage. Use it to either come back to me or to go further away from me. It's up to you. All right. That's what it means in a nutshell. That's how Prabhupada helped explain it to us further. And then Krishna explains to Arjuna that each body has a soul, and that just as a body changes from young to old, it similarly passes into another body at the time of death. I'm repeating what I've said earlier on, right? So basically what Krishna is saying to Arjuna is that he should not lament for killing of his relatives in the battlefield, and that Arjuna was merely executing his duty as a Kshatriya. And he also goes on, Krishna also goes on to say to Arjuna that he should rejoice at the changing of bodies from old ones to new ones. Because in that way, they are getting rejuvenated bodies. And we should understand from this that the soul is eternal and does not die when the body dies, from this very statement of Krishna's. Right? So the soul will exit one body and enter into a new one. Okay, if we have a vehicle, a motor vehicle, and it's really old, it's had its days, what do we do if we can afford it? Don't we trade it in for a new vehicle? We get rid of it sometimes, we buy a new vehicle. Because it's not of very good use to us anymore. Likewise, the body, if it's done, it's of no use anymore. The soul will leave it and will go for a new body. So Srila Prabhupada explains that in the Varaha Purana. He explains all of this. Right. And the living entities or individual souls are described as separate parts and parcels of the Supreme or the Super Soul, and remains a separate identity. So we know what that means, right? We're all part of the Super Soul, which is Krishna. We are little sparks, okay? And in that way, we are separate identities from Krishna. Does that make sense? Is it okay so far?
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay, okay, right. Properties of the soul. So we must understand that the soul is present in the form of consciousness. The soul is what's giving this body consciousness. Consciousness means to be alive. When the soul leaves the body is declared to be dead. It becomes unconscious. Therefore, the soul is present in the form of consciousness. It gives life to the body. And the soul is seated in the chambers of the heart of every living entity. And the dimension of the soul is 1 divided by 10,000 the tip of a hair, according to our Bhagavad Gita. So if you take a hair strand and you look at the tip of that strand of hair, take that bit and divide it by 10,000. And that is the size of the soul. So you can't even see it through a microscope. That's how tiny the soul is. Now that tiny, 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 minute little spark is giving life and consciousness to this entire body. Imagine that. Imagine the power of that soul. What great potency. And where is that power coming from? That's a question to be asked. It's only a tiny spark of the great super soul. So imagine the super soul. Imagine the super soul. Paramatma. Not you, Paramatma Prabhu. Paramatma Prabhu, you there?
Yes, Mataji, I'm here.
Nice name, Paramatma Prabhu. Yeah, so so imagine Krishna, the energy of Krishna. Right, so we say that the soul is present in every body, not only humans. The tree has a soul. Why does the tree have a soul? Because it's living. Anything that has consciousness, it may be a low level of consciousness. It may be an elevated level of consciousness. But as long as it has consciousness, it has a soul. And every living entity is accompanied by Paramatma, by the super soul. Remember, we said, I think it was the first or second class where we did a little, like a sketch. I think I showed you on a little, like a diagram. And I said that the Lord enters into every atom of creation and into every living entity. He goes and takes his place there as the super soul in his heart. And he sits there as a witness to all our actions. Right. So we can move on to verse 14, if that's okay. Veronica Mataji, would you like to read this verse?
I'll read.
You read from the Sanskrit, right?
Okay. Madrastarshastu kunteya sitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama payano nityas tam sthitishva bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O ocean of Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Purport: in the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of Magh, January to February. It is very cold at that time, but in spite of that a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious principles of the Kshatriyas, and although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge, because by knowledge and devotion, one can only liberate himself from the clutches of Maya illusion. The two different names of address given to Arjuna are only significant. To address him as Kunteya signifies his great blood relations from his mother's side, and to address him as Bharata signifies his greatness from his father's side. From both sides, he's supposed to have a great heritage. A great heritage brings responsibility in the matter of proper discharge of duties. Therefore, he cannot avoid fighting. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you for that, Veronica Mataji. So you understand this purpose, right? Okay. Now, very difficult to tolerate. Tolerance is a very difficult thing. I think we all experience that challenge. But here Krishna is saying that we should learn to tolerate. Because everything that happens arises from sense perceptions. Our perception, how we perceive it, is how it will affect us. And you should learn to be tolerant in any kind of situation. You should not be disturbed. And a person who is so balanced is very favorable to Krishna. And his pathway to Krishna is much, much easier. Right? And then there's some notes here. We, the soul, right? It says here, we are not going to die, all present on the battlefield. Right? Krishna says here to Arjuna, actually before this, he says to him that, you know, all these people assembled on the battlefield, they are not going to die. Their bodies are going to die. They will continue to exist. So just as we have accepted this material body, similarly, we will accept another body after death. The question here is what kind of body we will get. And that is dependent upon how we live our present lives and on the last thought before leaving the body. There's a nice verse, we will come across it later on. Krishna very openly says that whatever you think of at the time of leaving your body, that destination you will achieve. So the intelligent person will strive for a spiritual body. That is no more birth and death. An intelligent person will do that. And therefore, that intelligent person will practice here because this is our practice ground. We will practice by reading and understanding scripture, by taking devotee association, by serving the Lord, by serving the deities, by serving devotees, by chanting our rounds, by observing austerities, by taking Krishna Prasadam to purify our consciousness. All of that will be contributing factors to our state of mind when we are leaving our bodies. All right. So now this body is not eternal, blissful, or full of knowledge. It is full of ignorance. We are not Sachit Anand like the Lord. We are not eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. We are full of ignorance. And we do not know what is beyond this world because our senses are material. We have limited senses. But by approaching a spiritual master, by engaging in devotee association, by reading our scriptures, by listening to classes, in that way, our mindset will move from material to spiritual. That would be very helpful. So it's not very easy to just say, okay, from today I'm going to tolerate winter and summer seasons equally. But it's a process. It's a process of practice. And the more you engage in devotional service, the more you engage in reading and studying scripture, the easier Krishna will make it for us. Right? And see, Arjun has a very, comes from a very firm, highly elevated and intelligent family on both the mother and father's side. So Krishna is saying here, Arjun is from such a high-class family. He should not act in a mode of ignorance. Arjun should apply his intelligence, stand up and fight, and see beyond this. He should understand that we are not the bodies, we are the souls. We are souls, and that he's got to fight because it's his duty, and he's got to fight because I want to establish principles of dharma, and he has to follow my order as I am authority. That's what Krishna is trying to highlight here. But of course, don't forget, we spoke about this before, Arjuna is not unintelligent. Arjuna is fully aware of everything that is spoken here in the Bhagavad Gita, but it was spoken for our purpose. Okay? This is for our learning, for our understanding. So we've got, I think, time only for one more verse today. It's already 1:45. So let's see how it goes. Would anybody else like to read the Sanskrit of verse 16? I mean 15, verse 15. Anybody else, please? Don't be shy.
I can read, Mataji.
Okay. This is Navkishore Mataji. Please read, Mata.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
यही न व्यथयन्ते येते पुरुषं पुरुष शर्भ समदुःख सुखं धीरं सौमृत अवत्यायं कल्पते. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Purport. Anyone who is steady in his determination for the advanced stage of spiritual realization and can equally tolerate the onslaught of distress and happiness is certainly a person eligible for liberation. In the Varnashrama institution, fourth stage of life, namely the renounce order, the sannyasa, is a painstaking situation. But one who is serious about making his life perfect surely adopts the sannyasa order of life in spite of all difficulties. The difficulties usually arise from having to sever family relationship, to give up the connection of wife and children. But if anyone is unable to tolerate such difficulties, surely his path to spiritual realization is complete. Similarly, in Arjuna, discharge of duties as Kshatriya, he is advised to persevere, even if it is difficult to fight with his family members or similarly beloved persons. So Lord Chaitanya took sannyasa at the age of 24, and his dependents, young wife as well as old mother, has no one else to look after them. Yet, for a higher cause, he took sannyasa and was steady in the discharge of highest duties. That is the way of achieving liberation from material bondage. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. So you see here, Krishna says here to Arjuna that one who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both happiness and distress is certainly eligible for liberation. So as we spoke just now, it's very difficult to tolerate, but we must strive for it. And when we do achieve it, if you manage to achieve this equilibrium between happiness and distress, where you are unaffected, you are steady-minded, then such a person is eligible for liberation. So you see the process. And we just discussed just now how we can try and get to it. Kadruta Mataji, you'd like to read the rest for us, or are we done with that? Oh, we're done with that. Okay.
Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I think text 13, Mataji only read half of the whole paragraph. Yeah. She stopped by change of bodies, but there's still another paragraph. If Kadruta Mataji wants to read, she can read the following paragraph.
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that.
Are you aware?
We discussed
okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mataji.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, can we do one more verse or shall we leave it? It's 10:02. Shall we do one more? It's up to you. We've got 10 minutes and we've got Nishinga Pranams. Can I hear from you, please?
Yes, Mataji.
Can we go ahead? Is it okay with everybody? Okay?
Yeah.
Yes, Mataji.
Okay.
Yes, it's fine.
Thank you. Kadruta Mataji, would you like to try the Sanskrit of this verse?
Nasato vyadate bhavo nabhava vidyate sataha ubayavara pidrishto nitas viyamayas tattva darshibihi. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. Purport. There is no endurance of the changing body, that the body is changing every moment by the action and reaction of the different cells is admitted by modern medical science, and thus growth and old age are taking place in the body, but the spirit soul exists permanently, remaining the same despite all changes of the body and the mind. That is the difference between matter and spirit. By nature, the body is ever-changing, and the soul is eternal. This conclusion is established by the classes of a series of the truths, both impersonalists and personalists. In the Vishnu Purana 2.12.38, it is stated that Vishnu and his adepts all have self-illuminated spiritual existence. Jyotish Shri Vishnu Bhuvanin Vishnu. The words existent and non-existent refer only to spirit and matter. That is a version of all seers of truth. This is the beginning of the instruction by the Lord to the living entities who are bewildered by the influence of ignorance. Removal of ignorance involves a reestablishment of the eternal relationship between the worshipper and the worshipable, and the consequent understanding of the difference between the part and parcel living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Okay, who else have we got in this chat and haven't had a chance to read? Ravindra Prabhu? Hare Krishna, are you there?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Would you like to read up what's on the screen? One can understand.
Yes, sure. Yeah. Hare Krishna. One can understand the nature of Supreme by thorough study of oneself. The difference between oneself and the Supreme being understood as the relationship between the part and the whole. In the Vedanta Sutras, as well as in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme has been accepted as the origin of all emanations. Such emanations are experienced by superior and inferior natural sequences. The living entities belong to the superior nature, as it will be revealed in the 7th chapter. Although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic is accepted as the supreme, and the energy or nature is accepted as the subordinate. The living entities, therefore, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of the master and the servant, or the teacher and the taught. Such clear knowledge is impossible to understand under the spell of ignorance. And to drive away such ignorance, the Lord teaches the Bhagavad Gita for the enlightenment of all living entities for all time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, so there's in the last line we see Prabhupada is saying this purport. Let's drive away our ignorance. The Lord teaches us the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. Okay, I think we're going to have to leave verse 17 for next week because we're already 5 minutes away from closure. Any realizations quickly before we do Nashingadev pranams? We hear from everybody. Paramatma Prabhu, let's start with you.
Nothing, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Okay. Veronica Mataji, anything from your side?
I'm just thinking about something I saw on social media and WhatsApp, I think it was, where somebody asked, who are you? And it was so nicely illustrated, and it said that I am the soul and I have a body.
Wow.
And that was so beautiful.
Very important, yeah. That's brilliant. That's excellent. Thank you. Kadruta Mataji, anything from your side?
Hare Krishna. All these verses from today revived in my heart and soul a very beautiful allegory from Sri Upanishad, which are giving us the story of the two birds are sitting into the tree. One bird is very anxiously and eating the tree's fruits, and the other is calm and just watching the other. We are the anxiously bird, and the witness bird is our super soul. And this super soul we must understand like an authority and higher authority, and is like a father giving direction to his sons. This is in my mind. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Mataji. It's a very nice analogy that two birds sitting on a tree, the soul and the super soul, and where the super soul is the observer. That's a very nice analogy. Thank you. Anybody else? Navikishore, Mataji, anything from your side?
Yes, Mataji, like this analogy from I was also reading from Srimad Bhagavatam text 1, the chief engineer, and one analogy scientist. So they are they are like more material soul who are making all the rockets and everything. They knows all the nooks and corner. But super soul is Lord Krishna. So he is he is above all, and he knows everything what is happening, and he is the one who is giving everyone this understanding and intelligence.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you for that, Mataji. So nice. Ravindra Prabhu, would you like to add anything?
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you very much. Nothing from my side. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else like to add anything? Cover everyone. Bharti, Isha, Madhuri Mataji, Givashni, anybody else? Or can we proceed to Nashingadev Pranams? Are we okay? All right, who wants to sing first today? Anybody singing Pranams first today? Stop sharing the screen. And
I can sing.
who wants to sing first? Haribol?
I can sing.
Okay, you can sing first. Thank you.
Okay. Hotels.
Just gonna try very quickly. You have the words with you, Radhika Mataji. Haribol, do you have the words?
Yeah, I've got it. I've got the words.
Yeah, okay, that's right.
Shri Nisingha Pranam Ki Jai. Namaste Narsimhaya Pralatalatakini Hiranyakashi Pudashana Hiranyakashi Pudashana Hiratanthanatalaye Nishimhamadin Sharanam Prapati Nishimhamadin Sharanam Prapati Davatara Tamalabhade Nakama Bhutta Shinda Dalita Hiranyakashipu Danubrinda Davatara Tamalabhade Nakama Bhutta Shinda Dalita Hiranyakashipu Danubrinda Keshavadika Sahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Nashingadev Jaya Nrsimhadev, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj, Jayo Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada. Krishna Deva Pranam Ki Jai, Bhakti Prahlad Ki Jai.
Thank you very much. So sweet, Veronica Mataji. We should all take turns and lead Nishingadev pranams from next week, okay? That's okay. Om Nama Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivargacharya Sutra is Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivargacharya Sutra Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Mathura Dham Mayapur Jagannath Puri Pandharpur Arvati Kurukshetra Ayodhya Dwarika Dham Ki Jai. Shri Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Tulasi Devi Maharani Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Nindai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the Simul devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the Simul devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the Simul devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Vasindhya Evacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you, dear devotees. So we'll assemble again next week. And hopefully we're going to have more readers next week. And a volunteer to sing Nishingadev's pranams. That will be really nice. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.